Hey guys, it's me Kevin, and today I'm going to be tipping round 4 of the AFL season. So, to start off the round, we head to the SCG on Thursday night, where a disappointing Sydney plays an even more disappointing Melbourne. Well, at least Sydney got their season back on track last week by winning, something Melbourne didn't do. And I will be tipping Sydney only for one reason. Melbourne haven't got their players back yet. It's at the SCG. I know they don't play too well there, but to my memory, I don't think Melbourne's played that well there either. I don't know. Both of them are struggling, but I think after Sydney's win last week against Carlton, they'd be coming in with more belief in comparison to Melbourne, and it's at the SCG, even though that doesn't do much, but that's why I'll be tipping Sydney. It was a very hard one to tip. I literally tossed a coin. Okay, no, I didn't, but I think you get what I mean. Friday night, intriguing battle at the MCG, Collingwood versus the Western Bulldogs. I'm tipping Collingwood because I wouldn't use losing to West Coast as a reliable reference on how you're going to go this season. Because I think to beat West Coast, well, you have to be something special at this rate. Particularly if you're at Optus or even the MCG. So I'll still be tipping Collingwood because the Bulldogs, despite a good first 2 rounds, lost to Gold Coast. I know they fought back in the end, but I think Collingwood will get the better of the Bulldogs on Friday night. They're generally the better side. It's just that they didn't have an ideal start, but yeah, I think Collingwood will win. Saturday afternoon, GMHBA, Geelong versus GWS. Another very hard game, very intriguing game. I'm tipping Geelong because of their 3-0 start. GWS, mind you, they're playing very well as well. They beat Richmond. They slaughtered Richmond, actually. And they slaughtered Essendon even more. So, GWS, I'm confident about them, but I don't think they'll win at GMHBA because that's a fortress that Geelong has. They play very well there. They rarely lose. Well, they're flying. They're on top of the ladder, so I'm tipping Geelong at GMHBA, obviously. If it was at Spotless, though, I would have tipped GWS, just saying. At the MCG, another one that was hard to tip, and I'm going with an upset here, Essendon to beat Brisbane at the MCG, because it's at the MCG. Mind you, if I was at the Gabba, I would be tipping Brisbane, but I'm not convinced that Brisbane will be able to win at the MCG just yet. Essendon got their season back on track last week after winning pretty convincingly against a Melbourne side that was trying really, really hard the whole game. So I think Melbourne will beat Brisbane considering it's at the MCG. Maybe even if it was at Marvel Stadium, I'd be considering Brisbane, but yeah, Essendon for that game, one off. Saturday 4:05 at Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide, to beat Richmond, because Richmond, well, they don't play well on the road. Port Adelaide, they've started off the season relatively well. Last week was a bit of a setback, but I wouldn't try beating Brisbane at the Gabba. And if anyone who loses at the Gabba, if it's not Brisbane, basically I wouldn't say it's a reliable source of how their season's going to go. I mean, West Coast can't play up there usually. They don't play well. Anyway. On top of that, Richmond, well, they've got amount of injuries. They don't have Martin because he's suspended. That's the last thing they need. But they also have Cochin, Rance, Rewalt injured, and then there's a bunch of others that are also injured. So, yeah, I can't see Richmond doing anything. They're in a bit of a crisis at the moment, and that's why I'm tipping Port Adelaide to win and make Richmond slump 1-3. Not the way they want to start. Saturday night, Marvel Stadium, North Melbourne versus Adelaide. North Melbourne languishing at the bottom of the ladder. Adelaide also having a disappointing start, but I will be tipping Adelaide. Even though it's at Marvel, North Melbourne, they're probably playing worse footy than Adelaide, and Adelaide were able to beat Sydney at the SCG, so they should be capable enough to beat low sides, even if it's away from home. That's why I am tipping Adelaide. Also on Saturday night, West Coast versus Fremantle. Fremantle, they made a very promising start in round 1, but haven't backed it up in rounds 2, losing to Gold Coast. And rounds 3, only just beating St Kilda. Both of those sides expected to finish in the bottom 2 this year by many tippers. So yeah, Fremantle had a one-off fluke, and I can't see him getting back to that. West Coast, on the other hand, had a one-off bad fluke in round one where they lost to a ground that they hate. And then they've smashed probably two of the top four sides in the competition along with themselves, beating GWS and Collingwood convincingly. Because it's not because of, well, it's at Optus Stadium. There's going to be a big West Coast crowd. It's a West Coast home game. I think West Coast is going to absolutely slaughter Fremantle. Nowhere near close. I think West Coast is going to have a big dropping against Freo. Sunday afternoon, Gold Coast versus Carlton. Carlton still haven't won a game. Meanwhile, Gold Coast have beaten Freo and the Bulldogs, and it's a Metricon, so who do you tip? Gold Coast, obviously. I was actually thinking this was going to be one of the games that determines who gets the wooden spoon. May still well be, but Gold Coast are showing some pretty promising signs as of recent. I mean, they beat Freo and the Bulldogs, as I said. They could have been 3-0 if it hadn't been for that 1 point loss against St Kilda. Carlton, yeah, they've been competitive, but they can't sustain for 4 quarters. And if you can't do that, I don't think you can win. So that's why I'm tipping Gold Coast. And lastly, to finish off the round, Hawthorn versus St Kilda at Marvel Stadium, I think. I'll be tipping Hawthorn because, St Kilda, they're playing okay. They did lose to Freo last week. They could have easily won that. But I do think Hawthorn is the better of the two teams, if you ask me. There isn't a lot to say about this, but I do think Hawthorn, being the better of the two sides, will win comfortably. So, it was a very hard week to tip. But anyway, let's recap the tips. I'm tipping Sydney, Collingwood, Geelong, Essendon, Port Adelaide, Adelaide, West Coast, Gold Coast, and Hawthorn. So, I might change the tips depending on several circumstances, and if I do, I'll say at the start of next week's video. I hope you liked the video. Please tell me what your tips are in the comments below. Please subscribe. Please give it a thumbs up. And I'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned. Goodbye.